It's December 2nd, 1863 in Washington, D.C. A half-finished cast iron dome rises over a building surrounded by Union artillery. Soldiers are camped in the corridors below. A 19-foot bronze statue is being winched up through the open lantern at the top, section by section, while cannons fire a salute that echoes across a city still fighting a civil war. The dome was not supposed to be finished like this. It was supposed to be finished in peacetime, on schedule, without a single soldier in the building. Instead, the ironworkers kept hammering through Secession, through Bull Run, through Gettysburg, because a president 3 blocks away had decided that a rising dome was worth more to the Union than the money it cost. This is the story of the machines that finished the United States Capitol, Phase 1 of 7, a drawing that moved faster than Congress. In December of 1854, architect Thomas U. Walter hung a 7-foot drawing in his office. It showed the Capitol as it would look with new wings and a replacement for its old copper-covered wooden dome, this one built from cast iron, ringed with columns and windows, and crowned with a statue. Congressmen who wandered in to see it left excited. 10 weeks later, without hearings and almost without debate, the House appropriated $100,000 to begin. The Senate agreed within days. President Franklin Pierce signed the bill on March 3, 1855. A single drawing had committed the country to one of the most ambitious building projects in its history. Phase 2 of 7. Why iron instead of stone? Cast iron solved a problem stone could not. It could be molded into thousands of decorative and structural shapes, cast off-site and bolted together quickly, without the years of hand carving a stone dome would require. In February of 1860, the New York foundry of Janes, Fowler, Kirtland and Company agreed to finish all remaining ironwork for 7 cents a pound, delivered and installed. It was the deal that would keep the dome rising through the next 5 years, no matter what happened in the country around it. Phase 3 of 7, a crane built from the old dome's bones. Captain Montgomery Meigs, the Army engineer running construction, designed a triangular scaffold inside the rotunda that kept its weight off the weak center of the floor. At the top, a steam engine drove a crane capable of lifting 20,000 pounds of cast iron into position. Its fuel, in the first season, was the salvaged timber of the old wooden dome it was replacing. The machine that raised the new dome was, quite literally, built from the corpse of the one it was tearing down. Phase 4 of 7. The war stops everything except this. When Confederate guns opened on Fort Sumter in April of 1861, Washington became an armed camp. Meigs ordered all contractors to halt. The government, he said, had no money to spend except in self-defense. The ironworkers at Janes, Fowler, and Kirtland kept working anyway, without pay, afraid that cast sections left exposed would be lost or damaged. A reporter for the New York Times described the strange scene of hammers still ringing inside a building filled with drilling soldiers. President Lincoln watched the dome rise above a city preparing for siege and told visitors that if people saw the Capitol going on, it was a sign the Union intended to go on as well. Phase 5 of 7, 2 men who could not agree. Walter and Meigs spent much of 1858 in open conflict. Walter refused to hand over drawings because Meigs kept revising them without asking. Meigs refused to approve pay for Walter's draftsmen in retaliation. In one surviving letter, Walter accused Meigs of putting his own name on designs that were not his and demanded the lettering be removed. Meigs, in his reply, called the accusation an act of gross impudence. Both men eventually took their complaints to Secretary of War Jefferson Davis, who was, at that point in his career, still overseeing the very extension project the two of them were fighting about. Progress slowed to a crawl for most of a year. The one accidental benefit was time. The delay let Walter redesign the dome's upper sections to handle a problem that hadn't existed when the drawing was first hung on his office wall. If you're finding value in these forgotten construction stories, take a second to like and subscribe, because that's genuinely what keeps stories like this one findable. Phase 6 of 7, a statue that grew too big for the plan. Sculptor Thomas Crawford, working in a studio in Rome, had been commissioned to design the statue that would crown the dome. Walter's original plans called for a figure 16 feet 9 inches tall. When Crawford's finished model arrived, it stood 19 feet 6 inches. The extra height and weight forced Walter to lower the overall design of the dome from a planned 300 feet to 287 feet, and to rework the supporting structure beneath the statue's new pedestal. Even a piece of bronze, it turned out, could reshape a mountain of cast iron. Phase 7 of 7, finishing under artillery salute. By December of 1863, the dome's exterior ironwork was essentially complete. The Statue of Freedom went up in 5 sections, the final piece lowered into place at noon on December 2nd, while soldiers fired a salute of guns positioned around the city. Walt Whitman, watching from the street, would later describe the dome as a vast eggshell built of iron and glass. The interior was not finished for another 2 years. Italian-born artist Constantino Brumidi spent that time on a platform 180 feet above the Rotunda floor, painting the fresco known as the Apotheosis of Washington. When his scaffolding finally came down in January of 1866, the 11-year project was complete. The dome's construction depended on both enslaved and free black laborers, a fact often left out of the postcard version of the story. Detailed casualty records for individual ironworkers operating heavy, wartime-strained equipment were not consistently kept, so no reliable total death count survives from the project. What survives instead are fragments, notes on accidents, complaints about dangerous conditions, and the plain fact that men worked with molten and unforgiving material 11 stories above a marble floor for over a decade through a war without modern safety equipment of any kind. The finished dome weighs 8.9 million pounds of cast iron, built in 2 shells, one nested inside the other and painted to resemble the stone of the building below it. It cost just over $1 million, a figure that would be roughly $17 million today. Thomas Walter resigned as architect in 1865 and never saw the very last stages of his own design completed. Meigs went on to build the Pension Building and Arlington National Cemetery. The steam crane, the borrowed timber, the triangular scaffold, all of it was dismantled and forgotten once the last bolt went in. What remains is the dome itself, still the silhouette that centers every street map of Washington, D.C., still standing over Rotunda where the guns of December 1863 have long since gone quiet. Only a handful of cast iron domes of this age and scale exist anywhere in the world, among them St. Isaac's Cathedral in St. Petersburg, and engineers still study the capital's design when studying how iron structures age. In the 2010s, the dome underwent its first major restoration in over half a century, with crews repairing more than 1,300 cracks in cast iron that had, by then, been standing for 150 years without ever fully coming apart. It was authorized on the strength of a single drawing, built through a war that stopped nearly everything else in the country, and finished by men whose names, in most cases, were never recorded at all.